Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for another edition of Digital Soul Presents. Right now, I have the honor of having a really cool discussion with my man's here from the Midwest. My man's G, producer, drummer, DJ, artist, DJ Gonzilla. Gabe Gonzalez is in the house. What it do, G?
Hey, what's happening, brother? Good to see you.
Man, same here, man. How you been?
I'm blessed, man. Can't complain too much.
I heard that, man. I see we representing the Funkadelic. You got one, and you got one too, man. So yeah,
Oh yeah.
man, you gotta represent. Yeah, man. So get started, man. You know, you were one of the P Funk drummers, and I had to kind of step in and check in with you, man, because we done hung out a couple of times. We hung out in the studio, did some stuff, man, and you're super talented. And we got to go back and just trace back to when you really got into the drum. At what age, that drum thing really hit your soul. So tell me a little bit about your background as a kid, really getting into the drum.
Well, basically, um, I was around a lot of my family members, I had a, pretty musical household, so I was blessed in that. Right. I know my mom, she was really in a lot of jazz and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's ironic, she used to date, which is a pretty funny story. The famous jazz piano player Horace Silver,
Oh, wow.
and yeah, so which I didn't really know too much about him until later in life, but he actually proposed to my mom, but she
Wow.
didn't marry him because he was a vegetarian. I guess back in those days, cats wasn't vegan, so she was like, I don't know what to feed him, I don't know, so it was deep, but he ended up buying me my first pair of drumsticks from a music store in my hood, actually. And he would come in town and play all the time. This place, Baker's, which is like the oldest jazz club in the country, actually. I mean, like some of the greats that played there, from Cab Calloway's and all those, all the way up to now. This is actually still around in Detroit. It's a landmark, but so that kind of started there. And my aunt actually, her name's Chiquita. She was a popular drummer around town. She played like blues and had her own band. She was kind of like the Sheila E of the '60s to me,
Okay.
because she was real popular. She's real beautiful, and she had her own band. And I remember, like, she gave me one of my first drums, which is a Gretsch, floor tom, and a couple other Zildjian cymbals, which, for that time, I was a little kid. I was just like, oh wow.
Yeah.
So it kind of started there, and then my whole family said I used to do the pots and pans thing, but I don't remember that. But if they say so, I believed it. But kind of started there, and then I had got my first little drum set, which was one of those J.C. Penney's catalog boys, and that didn't last but a day or two. I ended up doing a Keith Moon on that mug, and it was over. So so that kind of was my first little introduction into it.
That's cool, man. And then I know that you're born in New York but raised in Michigan. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was born in Manhattan, money making Manhattan. No T's, right? You got to get that right, get the accent. Manhattan. No, yeah, so yeah, I'm a New Yorker at heart, but Detroit's like, ain't nothing, no place like it. It's like growing up here in the '70s was like it was everything. I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, especially my neighborhood, because I grew up on the west side. It was just pretty much the kind of, upscale, if you want to say, decent part of town. And like, I had people like Marvin Gaye was my neighbor. Like he stayed a couple doors down on Outer Drive, and Smokey stayed around the corner. And
Super cool, man.
just
Yeah,
Gladys Knight. I went to school with her daughter. Just so much, man. It was normal to me. But
yeah.
when I think about it now that I'm older, I'm like, dang, that was pretty deep.
Pretty legendary, yeah.
Yeah, I was blessed, man. On that note.
Yeah, yeah, because Michigan, I mean, it has so much history, that, with Motown and United Sound, and I know you've been in United Sound, man, more than enough times. Tell me a little bit about because I've never been there, so I want to see United Sound through Gabe Gonzalez's eyes. Tell me a little bit about United Sound, if you will.
Well, um, going back to what I was just talking about when I was a kid, like I remember riding the bus downtown Detroit to the local department store, which was a pretty big deal. I would ride with my grandmother, and we would go down and have lunch. And I remember the bus route would take us through a certain way home, and we would always come down this one street. And I was like old enough to kind of read then. I was about maybe 8, 7. So I'll be looking out the bus window, and you pass this big giant house. It's like one of these old school houses that's been there forever. And on the front, it says United Sound Systems. Now, I'm like, I was already on my little trip with my grandmother going to the local, well, it was like a little Kresge's, which was kind of like before we had dollar stores and all that. It was like
Yeah.
kind of like little like the Kmart, but another version of it. So at that time, you'd be standing in line waiting to check out. And I don't know if it's because Westbound Records was here or whatever, but they would have a bunch of Westbound Records in the cutout bins when you checking out the aisle to you buy your stuff. And
Wow.
I mean, all the great stuff. It was whatever you could be leaving and you get your Ohio Players album, a Funkadelic record, and them
Wow.
records was like $2, man. And still in the shrink wrap because I
Ridiculous.
guess back at that time they was just trying to get rid of the stock and moving them or whatever. And so anyway, I'll be sitting on the bus, cracking the albums open, reading the album covers before I get home. And I was old enough to know that, like United Sound, like, man, where did I know that? So I'm looking at the bus, and I remember a few times I wanted to get off, like just run in there because I would see cars and people outside. My grandmother was like, "Boy, don't calm your ass down." So that's my earliest experiences of United, and then I say about '87 was my first time I kind of got access to it. I was still in high school, and I went there for a session with Amp Fiddler, who was just joined P Funk, and George was there, and Bootsy actually, and they was cutting a track for this TV show, Tracy Ullman's show,
And this is the
and
first time you walked into United Sound ever.
very first time.
Wow. And all the
And
OGs were there.
yeah,
That's crazy.
and yeah, the part was like, Amp was playing all this, but I remember the track still. A lot of people remember the Tracy Ullman theme shows.
Yeah.
It was some everybody time to go, da good, getting ready for the show, some shit. But the original version didn't have any vocals, and it was so funky, man. It was stupid, man. It's like Amp playing all this crazy Bernie dark chords, and Bootsy was playing the guitar. So he was in there laying guitar down. And I had never seen Bootsy play anything but a bass, so that blew my mind. And then start talking to George and telling him about how I met him when I was 10 at the Glory Hollow Stupid concerts. My father used to cut George's hair back in the day, which is kind of how I got wrapped up in all of that. And so,
Yeah.
but that was like I said, my one experience. The first time I really was there, Bernie was there, which was probably a week or two before that day, and I had a couple of my buddies drive me down there. And of course, back then we couldn't really get access to the studios. I guess it was a closed session because Bernie was in there recording parts for Otis Dan and Knights from Animal House, who George was producing at the time. So, Got pretty much was that. So we didn't get in that night. I remember sticking my eyes and windows on the my eye peeking in the glass, like looking in, like damn, I can see in there, but so we finally, like I said, that one time I ended up going with another friend of mine and getting access and seeing that session, and then like the rest is history. I would go there a few other times. I think George was working on Cinderella Theory
Oh, okay.
around,
Okay.
around that time,
Okay.
and a lot of the stuff was done in Ab's house on 4 track. Actually, a lot of the demos, Why Should I Dog You Out? A lot of those songs were actually 4 track. So
Okay.
I got to see the first makings of those before they took them over to United and started, overdubbing and all that stuff. But no, it was definitely an experience.
Yeah, that's dope, man. That's awesome. Yeah, dope. Just walking into United Sounds and there it is. The
There it
heavens
is.
open up.
All right.
Yeah, super cool, man. And little Birdie told me you went to Berkeley, right?
I actually got a scholarship to Berkeley out of high school,
Yeah, man. How cool is that?
but unfortunately I didn't go because my first 2 years was melody percussion, which was like marimba and like Royers, like vibes and xylophone. I didn't know
Yeah,
nothing about that shit. So I choked, man. I pretty much I have been playing drums pretty much through, most of my teen years and developing my ear and everything. So I was self-taught kind of. So
yeah,
I would fake reading the charts in high school, but my the band director in high school kind of knew I couldn't read, but he loved my feel so much. I remember him saying, it's almost if you do learn to read, it might mess up what you got. So
yeah.
I was
Oh
just thinking.
wow.
So yeah, he said that. It blew me away. So he said my ear was so good. Like he said he had never met a drummer or musician that had an ear like mine. And my ears is, as raggedy as they are these days, with so much music running through them, they are my best asset because that's one of my secrets to playing with anybody. Like for instance, you see me play with 420 Funk Mob, and um, it's not easy because we don't rehearse really for that. So with it being P Funk, is you got to kind of be on your shit to be knowing those songs, and like I did my homework. So that's kind of it. Like that's what Lodge would always tell me, man. You did your homework. You did your homework. So they kind of got me through a lot because when I'm playing with certain bands or musicians, I might not have ever even seen or knew some of these guys I play with, but the audience wouldn't know that, and a lot of them swear like, "Oh, how long you been with the band?" Like, I just met these guys tonight. I don't know them. Like so. So I say this to say, my ear has been my best teacher because when I'm playing or jamming with somebody, I really try to play with the musicians I'm playing with. It ain't about me, I got chops, but my thing is letting, the keyboard player or somebody know, or the bass player when I'm playing know like, hey, I hear you, I feel you, I'm
Yeah,
listening to you. And which is my job, I ain't trying to be there, showboating and chopping and doing that, although, I am a show drummer, but it's just times for, certain things, and then, that groove is just something I learned over the years that you cannot abandon the groove and, uh, the group and the band that's playing with you, you know what I mean? So,
yeah,
because it's important because being a drummer, you carry that. Not only that, you gotta make it feel right for everybody, and then you want people to be shaking their ass and dancing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
you kind of got to know a medium for all those things,
Absolutely.
while you in the middle of it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're definitely the timekeeper, of the thing when you're behind that kit. And then you mentioned another thing about, giving everybody that breathing room, which is important, is communication
Hmm.
with the group. Like you said, looking around, making sure everybody's on cue, kind of making sure everybody's on point. Okay, we're
Yeah.
going to the bridge here. Okay, we're gonna fade out. We're gonna vamp here. So yeah, just kind of filling everybody out and make sure everybody gets their parts right.
Right.
Yeah. And I also heard that you had gotten offered to play with the Red Hot Chili Peppers at one time too. Is that correct?
Yeah, that was around the same time when I was in high school.
Yeah.
I was, pretty big Chili Pepper fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
Due to well, I kind of got plugged into the whole P-Funk thing from reading those album covers, and I called it one day. There's a number on there, and I still remember it was a 874 draw 312, which is Pedro Bill's actual number to his house. So if you had balls to call that number, some people, I guess, the few that did, they ended up entering into the abyss. So it was just like,
Wow.
so I called one day, and I remember calling. His mom answered, and she's this little sweet old lady, and I'm like, I thought I had the wrong number. It's like, is Pedro there? She's like, who's calling? I'm like, just a fan of his, somebody that, likes P-Funk, whatever. Did I say it then? I was like 15, 16, who knows? So we ended up chatting, and it blew Pedro's mind that I, knew a lot about the funk and knowledge about them, which is kind of where I picked up my little nickname, the Undisco Kid, because I was real knowledgeable about a lot of P-Funk stuff, and I had just discovered like Osmium and Ruth Copeland and all these records. I mean, this is like 1985, so nobody even talk about those records. So I didn't ever even knew they existed until another heavy P-Funk collector in Detroit, who's well respected by George and the camp, and he collects, I mean, a lot of stuff, and been a P-Funk fan since 71 or something. So he ended up hooking me up for my graduation from high school. I'll never forget that. And he ended up giving me a few live videos of P-Funk that he transferred from Betamax. So if that shows you how old that was, it wasn't even
Yeah.
VHS yet. He had these P-Funk concerts on Betamax, and
Wow.
he transferred them for me for graduating, which was like the Funkadelic tour and a couple other ones. So this had to be like 87, 88. But anyway, I remember Pedro just ranting and raving, going on about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, saying this is what Funkadelic should be sounding like in the 90s, because and he definitely was into them, and they was bringing it. Like I said, these four young cats and they white guys, and they playing like that, and
Oh yeah.
it was intense, man. And like so it actually inspired me to do my band. So long story short, I got a call one day. My grandmother answered the phone, and lo and behold, it was Flea. I didn't think so. I thought somebody playing a joke on me, and I was like, "Man, who the hell is this?" Shit, I was like about to hang up on him, and he's like, "No, man, this is Flea. Why don't you see if you want to come out and audition for the band or whatever?" I'm thinking, what? So that blew me away. And then he's like, "Yeah, I got your number from Clip." Now I know Clip was like the fifth Chili Pepper or whatever. To those who know, if you know, you know. So for him to pass the word on to Flea and he called me, it was a thing. So, but my grandmother wasn't having it because he was like the Red Hot Chicky Peckers or whoever. I don't care. He gonna finish high school because at the time I was already touring with bands, and that's the flip side. I was already playing with popular gospel groups when I was like 16. Around the same time, I was playing with like the J Moss and the Clark Sisters, and
Okay.
you know this cat Eric Bryce, who was Stephanie Mills' band director. He's actually he's one of the cats that raised me in the game. So I was,
Okay.
and another thing I want to say, just to document, when I was also 16, I've just recently realized like I was in a band with the original Funk Brothers, which I didn't know nothing about them. Like I was in a band with Earl Van Dyke Sr. and this guy Peanut Chandler, who Peanut is on songs like Intimate Friends, Eddie Kendrick, shit like that. You know what I'm saying? So
Wow.
uh just to be, you know, I'm basically saying like again that Detroit thing coming up on the West Side. I got a lot of experience from the real deal cats. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And a lot of these younger cats don't get it. Like, and I tell them when you hear my plan, you hearing 300 years of shit. Cause it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
I studied the old cats and I can still play like these new cats, but that's the thing. A lot of these new cats, they just be playing, they don't be listening.
Yeah.
That's the secret. They got chops for days, but they be like, fuck a groove, check me out. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yep.
like
Yep.
that's where they at. So and that's a few of them, like I said, but when you get I guess it took me years to learn that too, 'cause I was kind of wild, especially when I came around the gospel clique. They had to kind of calm me down and shit because I was, listening to Billy Cobham and all that in high school and playing all this fusion and stuff. And then, they looked at me like, boy, you got to calm down in the pocket. You got to get in the pocket, that. And another interesting thing I'd like to share was during that time when I was playing gospel, it was a big shift culturally and musically because so this is probably like 86, 87. So during that time, gospel was it was going through a serious upgrade because we were still playing the old school, like sanctified, like punk rock, when we
Yeah.
started getting into it. And a lot of I noticed when the older adults would leave, a lot of the younger cats would sneak and play funk in the church. They would be just playing little funk grooves when all the pastors and the deacons, everybody would go home and the bishops, whatever, because they couldn't play funk around, because like funk was still a bad word in certain, and then playing it too in church. So, but I did notice the shift, whereas gospel started to become more contemporary, more funkier, and definitely more groove oriented. And that was basically designed, I noticed, set up so they could get younger people to start coming to church again more because during that time, a lot of youth and even my peers and friends, a lot of my friends just didn't go to church. So I was kind of one of them, but I was kind of confused in a different level because I was raised Catholic, and then later I got into playing all the Baptists and all the other type of stuff. But I did notice, like I said, that shift in the music, and then all of a sudden, it started to be cool. People was like, I guess it's all right if it's gonna get more young kids to start coming to church. So at least that's how it was here in Detroit. Because like I said, I was part of that shit, playing with like people like Jay Moss and his brother Bill when they was the Moss brothers and commission and just all these different groups. I was just lucky to be around and get that experience.
Yeah.
So that's that all, like all that stuff made me kind of who I am. The gospel scene, Detroit, coming up around P Funk, and then I also had the rock side to me because we had the MC5 here, and the Iggy and the Stooges and all the heavy underground punk rock shit was here too. So it was like kind of like the best of like, three, four different worlds. And it's just, Detroit is just like that melting pot, all those things, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? So, but yeah, man.
Yeah. I heard that. And I know you mentioned the Red Hot Chili Peppers, man. They were kind of like your inspiration to start your band. We gotta talk about the Enema Squad, man, because you guys had a chance to do the Lollapalooza and a lot of other great venues and things like that throughout the career. Talk a little bit about the beginnings and building the band.
Well, that was pretty easy, simple move, but it was deep. So basically, I was with a reggae band called Onyx, and they was a pretty popular national reggae band. We had a couple songs on the radio nationally,
Okay.
and there was the brother who ran it and whose group it was, his brother named Khalid Shakur, who I met through Clip. back in the day. Cause I was kind of like I played with P Funk. My first show was with them around '88 when I was in high school. So this is way before the '90s when I got like officially in the band. But I played with them in a little hole in the wall club called the Cotton Club in Detroit, and which is half of my band. George used half of Enemy Squad, and the other half of the band was like the local cats, Lodge, Curry, Amp Fiddler, one of my guitar players, Ron Smith, rest in peace, who was the play with the Spinners. His daddy was Bobby Smith in the Spinners, actually,
Okay.
but Ron was pretty much on all my music coming up and a lot of stuff with Clip. And he was actually one of George's favorite session guitar players. So
Okay.
he's on quite a bit of songs you probably didn't know, stuff that Clip did and Steve Boyd and all those guys. Um, so it was like pretty much it. My bass player, my keyboard player, and half of George's band. Like I said, we got up there, and then we had some local vocalists to Paul Hill and this woman Krista Gaynor, who was dope vocalist, and Ron Ford, who was still around, and a few others from what I can recall. And I know Gary was there. George flew Gary in, and Gary kind of fine tuned us, and we rehearsed in my mom's basement, and that whole thing was pretty deep. So but anyway, uh, that all that stuff kind of happened through that, and when I got with Onyx, Clip kind of referred me because at the time Clip was George had just got the deal again with Paisley Park, so you know George was starting to get work again. They really hadn't been doing much, and once that kicked off, I had got with Onyx and with studio. We went in the studio and recorded, which is a couple singles on YouTube, and the band featured a lot of P Funk alumni. So and Onyx there was like Shirley Hayden, Blackbird, McKnight played with it on some records. Satori Shakur, who was, Jeanette Magruder in The Brides of Funkenstein. She was married to Khalid. So it's all kind of like it was a P Funk affiliated band to
Yeah.
that thing. And so that's how I started. So I played with them for a couple years while Clip was just starting to go back on tour with P Funk. And ironically, I left Onyx and started Enemy Squad due to something that happened, a gig out of town or something. And Clip was my actual first singer for the band when I first started. I actually have our first demo on fourth track that we did, which is actually a song he ended up recording on drugs. This song called "Never Ever" or something like that.
Okay.
But we did that back in like '87, and like I still had a like four-track demo of it. But so anyway,
Wow.
that's kind of how it started, and I ended up putting an ad in the local, trade paper for some musicians that I was looking for at the time. This was before the whole internet thing, and I was kind of told in the ad what I was looking for, and I ended up starting uh the band kind of off of that, and we didn't really have a name yet. It was a couple guys I was playing with, my buddy Craig actually, who was out there in California, who I started the band with, Craig Schneider, and he we pretty much with the concept. I was like, oh, let's start this band, and through that we ended up doing it. And I remember the first couple stages of us, like I said, doing our demos. We recorded a demo, and we didn't have a name still. So we was kind of like tinkering around with that. And I remember sending some of the demos to Pedro Bell. So,
Uh-oh.
Pedro Bell being the conceptualist he ended up sending me a whole list of names and all this crazy stuff from the demos I had sent him, or stuff I've been working on. And he came up with this whole list of just how Pedro is. He shit was like it was like all these
I can
different wild.
imagine.
It was crazy, man. I used to have the actual paper, man. I wish I'd have saved that. And
Oh my
I
God.
think one of them was like Jambizio tribe and shit like that, and another one was Protoplasm Squad. I think that's where it kind of came from. And some was enemy destruction or some shit. So I think I took enemy and the squad from another words, and then I put that together, and that's kind of how it started. We was enemy squad at first,
Right,
and then a lot of my friends was like they didn't like it or did because they thought it was kind of a little close to Public Enemy, which at the time all also knew um I was the first person to turn George Clinton on the Public Enemy at his house in '88 when It Takes Some Nations and Millions to Hold Us Back came out. And I remember literally sitting there with George at his kitchen table and listening to the whole album and pointing out the different Funkadelic samples. And I remember George Clinton saying uh, how he loved Chuck and Flav. It reminded him of how him and Ray Davis had the tones, with Chuck's
yeah,
voice, and how he had that squirrely ass high voice, like, he would use on, uh, uh, Soul Man and shit like that. So, it was just deep. So I feel kind of responsible that I was one first person to play George Clinton Public Enemy, right? So the next thing, a month later, I come by the farm in his house, and he's like, check this out. This is a demo. And this demo on it, the rapping, it was tweaking. They had just recorded that for Prince or whatever. So I'm like, all right, George.
there
So
it
that
is.
kind of started like that, and then uh we started putting some records out, and I kind of basically it was my version of Chili Peppers. So we had that same energy, but it was kind of like a Slide and Family Stone thing because I had kind of an interracial band back then too. And we would draw a lot back then. Like we could draw like one of the biggest venues in Detroit, which St. Andrews Hall, which is where I used to see the Chili Peppers and Fishbone and all these hell of a bands. So we started playing around town, and we ended up getting that reputation. And then through years of personnel changes, different guys leaving and whatnot, we ended up just always kind of revolving, changing members. And then I finally got a deal in '96 with one of the oldest hip hop labels in the country, in New York, and they ended up putting out a few singles and an album, which at the time I knew kind of what I was doing because I was still touring with P Funk when I got the deal, and they were kind of cool with it because they figured by me touring with P Funk, it'll help sell some records instead of me just being a local guy now. Here I am out here,
Yeah,
25, 26 years old, and I ended up being the drummer for Parliament-Funkadelic, which is something. And that's kind of deep in itself because I never told this part of the story. But by the time I got in the band with Funkadelic, I didn't even want the gig really because I was starting to get that gig when like I told you, when I was first played with them when I was 18, still in high school. Because
yeah, yeah,
I was hungry and could still. I was ready then. I know I was, but
yeah,
it's a political thing. It used to be going on with P Funk. Like most of the drummers came in from DC, like Tony Thomas and a few others, because of the horn players. For one, they would bring a lot of the drummers because P Funk Horns was working with when George was off the Gap Band or Chuck Brown, all these other different groups. So they would usually bring a drummer from one of those because Dennis Chambers had quit. I was at Dennis's last two gigs with P Funk, which was here in Detroit,
okay.
and I was '89. So and then Chicago was, I think, the day before that. So Dennis did those two gigs. Something happened, and he quit. So, but from there it was like, whoa. Then they ended up getting a couple other cats, and so by the time it came around to me, like '94, '96, they were on Lollapalooza then, and Frankie was the drummer, and I had just cut Fly On with Blackbird. I was 24 then, so we did that in the disc recording studio. Me, Lodge, and Bernie Worrell just happened to be in the studio today. Him and Boosie, they was handling some business for the family series recordings that George was putting out. So they was dealing with some paperwork for that. And I remember Blackbird being like freaking out, like, oh man, Bernie downstairs, he can't leave without putting the keyboard on this track, you know. So we had just laid the skeleton for Fly On, you know. And sure enough, you know, Bernie cranked up the organ upstairs and he put his part on, and like the rest is history, man. And I didn't know it from that day, like, you know, Fly On is a badass song, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And you could kind of say a co-writer because I was there when we all kind of created the song,
Right.
and I never knew it would kind of be a big anthem for P-Funk because they still play that song in the list. So sometimes, so for me, you know, for me that was a big deal. You know, like wow, you know, and I remember like a lot of different people hearing it at the time, thinking, wow, okay, Funkadelic is back. This is where you know what I'm saying.
That's the sound. Yeah.
Yeah, so you know, it kind of started with that, and I ended up putting Enemy Squad out, and then I was still touring with Parliament-Funkadelic from up until November '96, I
Okay.
believe, and then I kind of took a little hiatus.
Cool, cool. I know that you're a studier of music. You love music. You know, music is a big part of your life, like most of us musicians. So I want to ask you, give me your five top favorite drummers that you really, really love. Give me your top five.
Okay, well, most of the ones I love are just guys I'm inspired by. So I definitely don't try to play like them or beat them because that ain't gonna happen, and I'm cool with that not happening because to this day it's still some things you just can't surpass. But Buddy Rich is probably one,
Okay.
um, for various reasons. One of my first drum instructors took a couple lessons from Buddy Rich, and you know, he had the whole Buddy Rich kit and everything. So this was my first drum teacher. Um, and
Okay.
I'll say Lenny White probably is another one. Ironically, when I played with 420 Funk Mob, our first show, we opened for Cameo. I met this tall brother. He was videoing or talking, and you know, he gave me hell of a props. And I'm looking at him, and he's like, "You remind me of my brother." And I kind of stepped back and looked at him like, "Your brother?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I looked at him. I was like, he looked like Lenny White a little bit. So I was like, "Man, who is your brother, man? I know it's not who I think it is." And his name was, I believe, Bill White. So this was Lenny White's brother. So he could hear the influence in my playing of his brothers because you know, I was definitely into a lot of Lenny White and Turning Forever and stuff like that. So he's probably the second one. And
Okay.
then um I got a lot into like in the 80s into Stuart Copeland. I was just listening to him a lot, the
Oh
police.
yeah. Yeah.
And from there, Tony Williams is definitely another one.
Okay.
Um and like all his stuff is just amazing. And his bass player, Tony Newton, I've been working with him lately on some projects. Tony Newton's is from Detroit, another badass, but he played on
Doubt.
a
Doubt.
lot of those Tony Williams records, and with Alan Holdsworth, and they were killing, man. He brought the funk to it. That's the difference, you know. He's like all the fusion cats applying stuff, but they wanted the funk in there. 'Cause you notice later in the '80s, all them fusion guys they started trying to emulate and copy P Funk, like George Duke and you know, the different guys with the Bootsy voice and all that stuff. So it's like, because it's like you want to sell some records or you want to keep playing that crazy deep music that only musicians love because musicians don't buy records. You know what I'm saying? So I mean, back then we had to get it, but you know what I'm saying? It was like the funk started to be so mainstream that everybody had to get a piece of it. You know what I'm saying? In the late '70s. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but so probably okay, a couple other ones would be Jonathan Moffett.
Okay.
Uh,
Sugarfoot.
Sugarfoot. That's my guy.
Yeah.
And I was watching him from the Victory Jackson's tour days, and
That mofo right there, boy.
oh man, he's a drummer. And then Narada Michael Walden is another one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, and of course I had to say Dennis Chambers. Dennis texts me today. Dennis texts me every other day. That's like a personal friend of mine. So it's like Dennis is the
Gotta
guy
love
that shit.
that, Gotta love that.
Oh man, for real. Like, and it's the crazy part is he texts me every day. We don't even talk about drums. It's like unless he brings it up, I don't even ask Dennis nothing about drums.
Yeah.
We talk about everything but that because I don't want to be like most. Dennis, what color drawers you wore on when you did that solo? It's like,
Yeah.
So I try to be real neutral and stuff, and so, but that's my guy, man. So he's another one, and probably another influence would be Yogi Horton,
Okay.
who is on tons of hit records from Upside Down, You Turned Me, Diana Ross, all them Luther records. He commanded a hell of a pocket, and he's just like, he's just so aggressive in it. It's just like so that guy's definitely another one.
We can't complete this conversation without talking about Gonzilla Radio on P-Funk Radio. You've been doing that for quite a long time, man. Talk a little bit about starting that show, which I've had the honor of being played on your show several times, and I thank you for that. And you have reached out and pulled so many people and artists on that show, and just playing a gumbo of funk, man. Every time you always bring it. So yeah, talk a little
Oh,
bit about the beginnings of Gonzilla Radio and getting that started.
well, that kind of started with an idea. I was making mixes for a minute, like birthday tributes for people like 2017 through 2019.
Okay.
So it started like that. I was doing these I ended up getting a DJ controller again. So I ended up kind of compiling because I was getting bored. I'm like, all right. At first I just started making, excuse me, remixes and stuff like that, and then I was sending them in to P4 Radio or a couple other stations and DJs to play them on their shows. And started like that, and then a few of the other jocks on the station who actually just came to P4 Radio, Robin Denson and Philip Kiley, they had me fill in for them because they like my mixes and start doing a couple times I filled in for him and did the show, which kind of blew up more than I guess everybody was expecting, and kind of kicked off from there, and then I would do a 30-minute mix on Robin's show when she first started, and people started hearing like these crazy remixes I was doing, so it kind of built from there, and so uh the pandemic kicked off, and we all ended up being in quarantine, and you know how that went, so I had ended up kind of figuring out, okay, what am I gonna do now? It's like being the house bored and shit was crazy, and I was just like cabin fever was kicking in for real. So I'm like, you know what? Let me try and do a radio show, and I started on this local platform at first with this station, and I think I was kind of still figuring out my format because I was scattered a little bit because it was like I still had a lot of the supporting people listening around the world, the normal funk fans, and most of y'all on the West Coast and, all around. But then I was trying to cater to the local hip hop scene because I had some of my guests and friends in the studio with me who are local popular hip hop artists. and they was just kind of hanging out with me on the show. So I started kind of trying to cater to that. And I think I lost a few people because I had all these hell of a funk heads the beginning hour of the show, and once I got later in the show, I started playing more local hip hop and just stuff and showing my support for a lot of the local hip hop guys that I support and mess with. So,
Yeah.
but so during the pandemic, it got a little worse, and they ended up shutting that station down for a minute because they could we couldn't have anybody in there, and they couldn't keep it clean or something was going on. So the station goes down. I'm like, dang. So I was like, I'm gonna get this funk out there now. I was just getting warmed up. So I called Keith one day, and ironically, this is a deep story. So I called him like, hey man, I need a spot to do my show, at least maybe a night or two until they work the thing out with the station. And he was kind of like at first a little hesitant, but then he's like, all right, so we went for it. And that day, my first show started on P Funk Radio on their platform anyway. I had my uncle, which I call him my uncle, the legendary keyboard player before Bernie were real, Mickey Atkins. He was the original Funkadelic keyboard player. So he was a guest on my show the first day we kicked off. And sadly enough, he passed away that morning. I had a heart attack the day he was supposed to come on the show.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that blew me away. So now I ended up making it, on top of dealing with all that, which was traumatic, because I knew him personally and worked with him. I couldn't, it was a lot on my head. I'm thinking, okay, well, I done built all this up tonight. It's the first night. I didn't really want to cancel it.
Yeah.
So what I did was turn around, use my brain for a minute, and a light bulb went off. Just like, hey, man, the best way you can celebrate him right now and get your mind off this is do a tribute to him and play some music at least, and try to help, ease my thing dealing with it and
Yeah.
emotions and everything. And then, I know his family was going through a lot. So that was my first one on P Funk Radio, which is pretty deep. Mickey passed, and I think I had like Aries Wilson on, who worked with him, and
Yeah.
a few other people just kind of talk about him and said a few things about Mickey. And so from there, it started there. So after a couple weeks, I started getting the hang of it, and then I started having some of my first guests was like some heavyweights, like I had Martha Reeves on, and she was funny. She's like an auntie too. She's so wild and stuff. So, and then I had Joe Pep from Undisputed Truth, who's also P Funk alumni, and a couple other things. And I had McKinley Jackson from the Politicians, who is also the father of Detroit's hip hop mayor Proof. So having McKinley on was deep because he's on that Maggot Brain album. That's that trombone solo on Back in Our Minds. Nobody ever even talks about that, but I
Okay.
like he's the guy who did that. So that's
Okay.
one of the things I pride my show in. I would I do it ain't really trivia, but I try to educate the listener. I'm not just playing music. So it took me a while to get that down. So that's
Yeah.
pretty much what my show is. It's an educational show where I try to educate the listener about certain artists that some people may know or may not know of. I break a lot of new artists on the show, like you guys, Skunk Mob, all that. And I just played your joint the other day. That's my other joint. It's Illusional Funk now, baby. Look, come on.
Yeah.
And I like the part when you say Eddie Hazel, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I had to play that the other week for the Eddie tribute. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Stuff like that, man. I try to give all my friends and peers some shine in because of the Facebook and the internet. And a lot of these shows, I was able to meet and link up with people like you before I was able to meet you and
Yeah.
a lot of different guys. So it's like, it's always cool to me to, because we are everybody know everybody on Facebook. You can swear you related damn near like, oh man, I don't watch his kids grow up on Facebook. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So,
yeah, for sure. You're right.
but yeah, once you finally meet, you know, the person you've been chatting with or talking to, it's a whole nother thing. And when I first
Yeah,
met you, it was like a long lost brother or something. I still remember it when trying to get us at the whiskey when we was in
yeah,
Inglewood. I still remember that's the spot now. Every time I come to Cali, I stay there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
You
but no, man, I definitely appreciate your support, man, and any other artists. So that's pretty much what I do with the show. I try to uh give everybody some shine that's doing something, or playing new music, or let them know you got something new coming out, or a show or something, or that we working on stuff. So I figured that's the best thrill I get out of myself because it ain't really about me. You know what I'm saying? It's really I love trying to bring other people together and let people know what everybody else is doing. So that's part of it right there. Yeah, but Wednesday nights, y'all check me out. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time. We get it in.
man, every Wednesday it's popping, man. Funk for your butt, butt for the
Oh
funk.
yeah, man. Thank you, my brother.
Yeah, and you made a very good point, man, on about the support and one thing I know, man, and I feel the same way, which is the reason why we're here now talking. We're a community, you know,
Right,
and we all, like you said, it's one thing, we all kind of cross paths on Facebook, but then when we start to kind of coming into each other's cities and we actually meet up, it's like, okay, I knew you from Facebook, but now we physically get to, we get to shake hands, hug, we get to bond, we get to smoke a joint, we get to do this,
right.
have a sip, we get to actually break bread and really, get down and, talk business.
That's
So
right.
yeah, so it's a beautiful thing, once we get to do that, and then you really build a friendship, and then we go back. You go to the East Coast, you go to the Midwest, and you go to the West, and be like, okay, I have family there now.
Right.
So
Oh yeah.
I know when I come to Detroit, I can call G.
I'm waiting. I'm shit. I'm still waiting on you. I'm waiting on you.
Yeah, right. And,
So you good. I know when I come out there, I'm good. So I just
exactly, exactly.
and that's the thing for me for years. I didn't really, I just like visiting, but I had a few bad experiences out there. I mean, not bad, but it's just the vibe. I noticed years ago in the '90s when I'll be out there, it's just
Oh yeah,
people would just be real flaky and shit. I didn't understand it, but
in
seems
California.
like yeah,
Yeah,
seems like the well, most of the LA cats. You know what I'm saying?
okay.
So they got the whole different groove. But once I started, uh, a little more in the early 2000s and so forth, I started meeting more cooler brothers out there. I used to work with Battle Cat sometimes, do
Yeah,
stuff with him, and different people out there in the studio. I would, try to connect with when I was out there and link up and do stuff with. So. And I got family out there too, so it's definitely a thing about it. You know what I'm saying?
absolutely, no doubt about that, man. I'm gonna pretend like you're my dictionary right now. I'm gonna give you some names, and when I give you these names, you give me your definition. If I were to open that book, give me the description. If you want to do it in words, a sentence, however you want to do it,
Okay.
I want to hear your definition here. Bernie Worrell.
See, you would do that to me and shit. No, that's good though. I had to take a deep breath. Well, Bernie is like a part of my kidney or some shit. It's like,
That's deep.
uh, well, Bernie is. Cause see, the thing of when I had to answer this, like, people don't realize, okay, I spent personal time with Bernie. I was his drummer for 5 years. Like 5 years is a long time when you add it all up. But he had many different lineups. So Bernie was like a father figure, mentor. You know, I remember we'd be and sound check, and I would jump up on his moog and I would start playing like the bass line to One Nation, or and I could play a little bit of stuff. People don't really know that. And I remember Bernie being shocked and look over and like, go ahead, and literally give me the cosign that it's okay to play his keyboard because I was just doing it during sound check, sneaking and he caught me. So I was like, oh man. So he was very inspiring to me, and he liked the little keyboard stuff I did because I was like, I remember us going in the studio and I cut a couple songs for the Warriors, and I remember I was being all embarrassed. I remember him standing like over me and behind me, and I'm tapping on this Wurlitzer or whatever, and it was just intense. And then I remember Bernie just saying, so I was like, Bernie, look. I was like, when I'm in my studio at home and I'm smoking weed and I'm in my crib, I can come up with some shit because there's nobody there but me. You know what I'm saying? So I don't have to
You ain't gotta
worry
answer for
about if
nobody.
I hit a wrong note, if I do something.
Yeah.
But I was like, with him standing behind me, it was really making me nervous as fuck. So I was like, oh man. And he, just told me, just relax, you got it. And so he took my song and kind of fixed it or whatever you could say. Because when I did the original version, I think my version was a little darker, but when he finally put his mastermind expertise to it, it was a whole nother vibe and stuff. But yeah, I miss Bernie, man. Like it was that night of his benefit. I remember I was playing the drums and Boosie was on the other drum kit and we were both playing drums at the closing song was We Want the Funk, and I remember Bernie coming around with Judy, his wife, and she didn't want him touching nobody. Like she was yelling and screaming at anybody who came too close to him or in contact because she didn't want nobody touching him. And I remember like just being on the drum set right there, and I felt somebody kind of grab my hand real tight. And I was still up on the drum riser, and I looked down, and it was Bernie, man. There's a video of that on YouTube, and you can see him grabbing my hand. And I didn't want to let him go. I was squeezing it because I knew at that moment it was gonna be the last time I ever seen him again. I knew it. And so he was trying to pull him and he was holding on to me. It was like he didn't want to let me go.
Yeah.
So it made I start tearing up, man. It was that deep. So, but that's how close I was with Bernie. And he always, always, no matter where we went, no matter what show I played with him, tour, every night he always introduced me and let his crowd, audience know that I had my own band and yada yada yada. And people don't really do that. That was some serious love for him to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's my definition of Bernie, man. He was a kind, warm spirit, musical genius, and a fragile being, man.
Awesome, man. Maya Franklin.
Oh man, Mal Gal. Well, Malia is something special to me. I know I did a little excerpt for her book with Seth. I don't know if it made it or not. Probably not, but either way, I still had to share my 2 cents. But uh, I met Malia earlier on, and you know, she was definitely intense. And I actually got a chance to stay at her house a little bit in Atlanta and
Okay.
hang out and do some work with her and Shirley Hayden from Parliament. I think we was all down there hibernating, because Malia was known for having the band houses and stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, she was just on another inspiration. Like if I had a track of something, she heard it, she would go in there and start writing to it immediately, or come up with something. And she just was real creative on that end. And she's always putting stuff together and plotting to make things, work and be bigger than what they were. As I remember, like, those days at her house, I'd be visiting her and we'd be staying there and sitting there. She'd be on the phone like Verdi White or somebody, Larry Blackman or somebody cameo. I mean, Malia was deep. She was connected to a lot of the a lot of the cats. So um, that's my one thing about her. So she was an inspiration. She was a plug in a major way for a lot of us in the band to get with different people outside of George. Um, like when I told you that Battle Cat situation, that was one of something kind of through her. And then they tried to get me to come to Compton, her and Billy Bass to work at Mac Minister Studio. Compton's most wanted, but I stayed at Battle Cat, so I didn't go. But I remember Malia and Billy Bass, we was all there, and it was just an intense moment. I was, like around the time of the NAB show back then in like 2004 or something. And then like I said, she passed. I just still couldn't believe it, man. It's just something like, like I lost the honor of mom myself, because she was so encouraging to me. I remember one of our last conversations at her house during that little stint there. It was like, and I don't think I told too many people this, she wanted me to be her like Jerome, as to like how Jerome was to Morris.
Yeah.
Well, she had this whole thing about, hey, we gonna go to Vegas. I remember her. I mean, she was like, she could see this shit so vivid. I couldn't see it because for one, I ain't into wearing suits and shit. So she was like, "You gonna come out? I'm gonna have you wear this suit, and basically you gonna walk me out, and at the end of the night, you gonna, escort me back, and then you gonna play and kill the drums in the last song." I love thinking, okay, Auntie, if you say so. So I wasn't gonna argue with it, but literally she had this vision of me like being her, like, kind of like, you
So
know,
ballet type deal.
yeah, and
Yeah.
walk around. I actually did that for India for the brand new heavies. A lot of
Okay.
people don't know that I was their stage production manager one tour.
Okay.
So I used to walk India from the stage to the dressing room, kind of like her bodyguard, and plus get
What?
the get the bands. Yeah, this was a few years back, and ended up we did a few shows too. The Essence Festival in New Orleans and couple other spots, and I know there was a Detroit show, but that's kind of how I got the gig, doing that, and then the rest is history. But I can see that. Yeah, rest in peace, man.
Yeah. Belita Woods.
Mm. See, that's parallel. That's like another
Yeah.
like mom type figure to me because Belita was sweet, but you catch her on one of the moments. You had her Jack Daniels and shit. She'll let your ass have it. You know what I'm saying? So she was about it. She was that Detroit
Yeah.
gritty Billie Holiday, all of that. Because she had that voice. You know what I mean? And she
Yeah.
had one of those voices like
Very unique.
unique, and it's a few of the P Funk women actually that have like I can hear them on any song they're on. Like she's one of them. Um, Dawn Silver's another one I can hear any song she's on.
Yep. Yeah.
Uh, Malia is another one, and uh, it's just a few. When you know that voice, you know it, and it's just something so unmistakable. You can't put your finger on it, but you know that voice is
Yeah.
one of the ones. That's why they call Belita the voice. So, but yeah, no, I love Belita. She was also a alumni member of Enema Squad too. The day I changed the name from Enemy to Enema, which was 2010, she was in the band with me. It's a video of that on YouTube as well. She's singing with us, and you know, she uh she definitely was supportive and would work with me when she went out with George. She would do shows with me and my band often. So,
Awesome. Yeah.
yes, sir.
Amp Fiddler.
Well, you naming all the ones, man. Like, uh, AMP is important for a lot of reasons because, um, like I said, I was still in high school when I had just met her. My buddy was a fashion designer, and AMP was kind of modeling his stuff, and the AMP was kind of big in the modeling world. A lot of people don't know that aside from playing music, So I would go over there, and he showed me a lot. before Jay Dilla and all those people kind of came in contact with him, I was that first one of the first students at Amps learning because a lot of stuff I do with the keyboard bass or even programming drum machine, I learned from him back in the day and a few other cats. So, Amp would love to take time with you, especially if you was younger or your youth to help you if you needed, some advice or wanted some help. Like I remember having a 4 track back in the day, the high speed 4 track, which is pretty high tech. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know it was a 4 track till a couple months after having it. So I was just like, so he would let me borrow his drum machine or keyboard or something for a couple days. So I would come home and I still got the tapes actually sitting right here next to me, like the cassettes from those sessions back in the 80s are sitting like literally right here next to me, those tapes.
Wow.
And he would loan me his OBX drum machine and all these different things. And I would come home and cut like maybe 5 tracks a day. Don't ask me where the motivation was coming from. Why I would just pumping stuff out, but literally I would cut 5 tracks a day, or if not more. And I did this because he was only letting me borrow the drum machine. So I knew I only had that shit for a couple days. So I was trying to
As
do a
much as you
couple
can.
a catalog and shit. Like, yeah, man. Like I said, by the time I brought it back to him, I'm like, Amp, I cut like about 6 or 7 songs and stuff. He's like, oh yeah. So a lot of them was just skeletons or just ideas, but still, a lot of it was cool when I was, messing around. My boy was pretty dope on the bass. He had that Bootsy Lewis Johnson vibe, so he would do his thing. And my other guy, Ron, who I mentioned earlier, did a lot of sessions with us. He would lace it with that P, man. Ron had a thing, man. It was like it's unexplainable, man, because he had that. He could go Hendrix on your ass like no problem, but he had another thing about him, that like I can't explain it, like catfish or something, one of the type of serious things with the rhythm and just some shit you just can't get nowhere else. You just gotta you gotta live that shit. You can't just play it, you know what I mean? So yeah, but Amp, man, that's my guy, man. Like seriously.
Garry Shider.
Man, what is this, man? You coming down there. These are all people who stayed in my house, man, and taught me stuff. So Gary was the next
That,
one
that,
in
that's
line.
that's that's why I'm dropping these names, brother.
Yeah, Gary was the next one in line. Like he like I was saying when he came in and rehearsed us for that first little show when I was in high school. So, Gary would linger around. I remember he stayed in my house that night and we woke up and Gary's eating his cornflakes. You know what I'm saying? He was about them damn cornflakes. The frosted flakes on top of that. So, but he taught me how to play a couple guitar lines, man. I still remember this little Kramer guitar I had with the steel forks. And Gary, I still remember the guitar line he showed me. The and he showed me to put my fingers and was like, dang. So I was messing around with that a little bit. And next thing I know, I was listening to P-Funk radio late one night and I woke up and it was like 5 in the morning. I thought I was tripping. He literally took that song out of my basement and did something with it. I guess he took it to Paisley Park or did whatever. He actually recorded that shit. It's called One Planet Under a Groove. And I
Okay.
just freak out every time I hear it. I have to tell everybody, he did this in my mama's basement. You know what I'm saying?
He showed me how to play it.
He did. He
Yeah,
did.
that's great.
So Gary, because I remember telling him, I was young. I was just getting good as a decent drummer. So I wasn't thinking about playing shit really other than trying to play drums and, make a couple beats. But
Yeah.
no, Gary had sat me down and he started opening me up to sitting topping out stuff on the keyboard or guitar and I had to thank him for it because even to this day, every time Garrett comes in town, And I always wear him out because I always tell him anytime Gary would come in town, no matter what the situation, how the show was, he always wanted to cut something, lay something down. Every time after the shows, or the first thing, where we cutting that? Where we cutting that? It's like, oh man, like he was about it, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And to this day, it still motivates me because every time they hear after the show, I take Garrett in the studio or
yeah,
clip somebody, we end up doing something, it's like a thing, we can't not do that. So, but Gary was the motivator. He was the glue to that band, and a lot of us didn't really realize that until he was gone, like how much he really was the glue. You know what I mean? So, 'cause, it's just George's band, but George wouldn't rehearse the band. Gary would rehearse the band. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Gary would make sure no matter what, George looked good, even if he didn't sound good. He made sure we sounded good to carry George through the night to make it all work. You know,
He was
guys like that, man.
sergeant at arms.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
Gary was that dude, man. He was,
yeah,
the other thrill sergeant next to Felipe.
yeah,
So, but
yeah,
I can name all the band leaders for that band. Bernie was the first one in the early '70s.
yeah.
Bernie was also the band leader in the mid '70s, and then Skeet did it, and then Gary did it again, and then after Gary, Blackbird did it. So I literally lived with each band leader of P Funk because I had to study all that shit. So a lot of people don't know that those specific people who I just named were the band leader for George. During those eras, and like I said, because it needed some order. Because even in the early days of Funkadelic, because they would just jam and Bernie would kind of mold and put that all together with his classical training. So he shaped it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Awesome.
So but yeah, man, those some hell of a names you name it. Definitely, all the people that kind of helped build me as far as whatever my funk character is, my funkadelic.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt, man. This is a part of history, and and they're like the what do you call the architects? Those
Right,
they're key figures, and I know that you had a hand in communicating with each and every one of those figures within your life. So I thought I would use you as a dictionary to kind of give me a picture of
right.
of those people who are no longer with us that were very important to us.
Oh yeah, very important for sure.
Yeah. G, give me your favorite 420 Funk Mob song to play live.
Um, for me,
That's a hard decision, huh?
well, see, it's a lot of them, and you gotta know something about 420 Funk Mob, which I'll say in a second, but um. It is kind of a hard decision because there's so many good ones to choose from. Because if you know the concept of 420, we try to play the most obscure P-Funk songs that George wouldn't think of doing or dare even touching.
Right, right.
Um,
Those that know, that's why I asked. These are some rare. These are more album cuts or B sides and things like that.
all of that,
Yeah,
B-sides
yeah,
and
and as you mentioned,
rarities.
yeah, and as you mentioned earlier, like a lot of the osmium stuff or some Ruth Copeland and things like that. So they do take a deep dive into some real obscure stuff that you don't normally hear out of
Right.
the norm. But everything sounds so freaking good when you guys play it, though.
Well, I think we are aiming to please each other because we all know these songs, like in the rhythm section, how because half of 420 now is Secret Army, and
Yeah.
of course, I bring my Enema Squad flavor to it. 'Cause actually, we were doing that Enema Squad, the Enemy Squad. We was kind of doing that first because we was doing P Funk covers, and I was doing these weird. Because I remember in like 1989, we had like Hit It and Quit It in our set and stuff like that, and a whole lot of BS. You know,
Oh, oh,
We were open with that because to
Oh,
me that song reminded me when I first heard it. It sounds predated Chili Peppers or Fishbone, like.
yeah, yeah.
And there's another fact that people don't notice. That's really the first appearance of Sir Nose that you hear when you hear George's voice. That's the Sir Nose effect. So he used it back then before it was
Totally.
even
Yeah,
a Sir Nose, the sped up tape loop thing. So, but yeah, no, 420. I'd say one of my best ones to play would be probably I call my baby Pussycat or mm, yeah, cause there's a few hard ones, man. I know I like that one,
yeah,
and there's so many rare odd ones we might go into. Like I know me and Danny one night we went off into Bodyguard, stuff like that. And then Undisco Kid, which
yeah,
is another one I got to do in New Orleans, and Clip put me on the spot, and I ended up singing it, and he played the drums. So,
yeah.
so it's a few, but like I said, most any of those, any of the stuff American East is Young, we would do. Balance, that's another one. It's just something like that. It's main stuff, and then I like picking ones, the shot clip that he wouldn't think we would do. Like um, what's the one? It was one that the P-Funk did back in the day. We did like computer games or something like that, man. We would try this bunch of different shit. You know what I'm saying?
A bunch of left field stuff. Huh?
Yeah, well, that's what we do in the dressing room because Clip's always like panicking before the show, like what are we gonna do? And I remember that night at the Whiskey a Go Go, and I was just like, man, I'm jet lagged. I'm like, we just gonna do what we gonna do, man. Ain't no need to worry about it now. Just one, two, three, go, like we always do. And
And then let
that
it
ended
flow.
up being a spectacular night that night, man. We was all
Yeah.
in rare form.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Just let the funk flow, man.
That's right.
Let it flow where it may.
Hmm.
My man. So yeah, my audience, man, I want to let you guys know. Go ahead and get that 420 Funk Mob. The Emperor Has No Clones. Also check out that Enema Squad live at the bitter end. Two dope ass albums out there right now. Gabe
Yeah.
Gonzalez, man, I do thank you so much for stopping through, man, giving us a little bit of history and talking a little bit about your great achievements and your amazing work. If you don't mind telling my audience where they can find you, talk about the Gonzilla Radio, where they can find the station, your
Oh
Instagram,
yeah.
Facebook, any handles you want to go ahead and drop here.
All right. Well, yeah, y'all can hit me up. I'm on Instagram, Gabe Gonzalez, lowercase, and Gabe Gonzalez on Facebook, and fan pages on Facebook. Gabe Gonzilla. Enema Squad is also on Facebook with our fan page, and we got a website, enemasquad.com. And you can hit me, like I said, on social media on here, and we are Enema Squad on Twitter and or X or whatever you want to call it. 'Cause I don't tweet, but hey.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I forgot, yeah, for those who know, we got a new single out that just came out on vinyl as well as the live one you mentioned, To Beware the Douche Lords, featuring Michael Hansen, Garry Shider, and James Brown, and quite a few other funk legends
Yeah,
on that. So y'all get that while it's out. It's just out on vinyl right now. I'm about to drop it digitally probably in another couple of weeks, but it's a hot smash. Beware the douche lords, and right now we got to beware the douche lords. So if you know what's up with it,
yeah.
it's those times.
And look for his stuff on Bandcamp also as well.
Oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
all the stuff is on Bandcamp.com, Enema Squad, and the Undisco Kid, which
yeah,
also features a lot of my solo work with a lot of the P Funk alumni and other people like Spacey T, Singleton, Ron Cat, and Saul Boom Boo, a couple other guys. We got some stuff. I got some nuts to stay tuned. Y'all got some hot new stuff I'm working on. In the meantime, with the Skunk Mob on some of my stuff with couple cats and as well as I gotta get you on a couple things too, man. I ain't it's
Bro,
still a work in progress, but doing
let's
that.
do it, man. Let's do it. You ain't said nothing but a word, man.
Yeah.
Let's make that happen soon.
Oh yeah, we on it. So we got that. And then like I said, we working on that and trying to finish this album, Greatest Shits, to drop it for y'all. So we out in another month or so. We've been trying to put it out now for the past couple years, and we just been squeezing out little singles here and there. But like I said, it's a real dope album, and Norwood from Fishbone co-produced some of the cuts with me. And
Nice.
like I said, we got some everybody on it, and just trying to add a few more parts right now. I got like I said, Ron Cat and Jara Harris working on some parts for me too for some stuff. So we trying to be one nation under the groove for real. you know.
That's what it is, man. You heard it here. P-Funk alumni, producer, artist, DJ
Yeah.
Gonzilla Radio, Enema Squad, 420 Funk Mob, Gabe
Yeah.
Gonzalez. Thank you for dropping through Digital Soul Presents, my brother.